before I go ahead, you might be wondering, what is this, right? I've been with Tredence for a lot of years, close to 9 years now, and of the many roles I've played, a little bit of a Santa flavor is there in me as well. So we'll start with a quick quiz, just to get a little bit of warm-up done. A quick show of hands, how many of you have heard about Tredence? Okay, awesome. I see a lot of hands up. How many of you know how many followers do we have on LinkedIn? This is a goodie bag. It goes to you, whoever is the closest, if not the exact, on how many followers do we have on LinkedIn. Any guesses? Any? Yes?
Pass on the mic, please, at the back. Can anybody guess or can anybody check?
10K?
Sorry, say that again?
10K.
That would have been true a few years back, not 10K.
Somebody at the
A
back?
million
1
in a
lakh?
few
No.
years.
1 lakh?
Anyone else?
1 lakh followers?
Say that again?
1 lakh followers?
50K
in the front.
No.
100K?
70K in the front.
I heard 70K, I heard 300K.
310,000.
310 is the right answer, whoever gave
Who
it.
said 300K?
310 is the right answer. Okay, so big round of applause for that answer. We have a goodie bag.
Can
can
we
please
get you on the
pass it
stage,
along.
please? If you can come on stage. Please come on the stage. Yeah.
Yeah. That's right.
Okay. But what's the thing about guessing the LinkedIn?
Say that again?
Was there anything?
310.
Okay.
Yeah, perfect,
Okay.
thanks. All right. Like I said, this is my first time at Cypher. Really excited to be here. It's been a great start to the event. I was attending a few sessions in the previous hall. Really looking forward to the sessions that we have in store for the next 3 days as well. And I've been following Cypher. One of the themes that stand out for Cypher in general, and especially for this year, is innovation. Right? I think we all can agree that we are at the front and center of a golden era of innovation. Things are changing rapidly around us in different directions at a pace that we have not witnessed before. But the question becomes, what do we do to make yourself and your team successful in this dynamic environment? I'm going to be talking about test, launch, and scale, which is essentially a framework that we can adopt to make sure that our teams are successful in this environment. Before I go into the session and the slides specifically, a little bit of a background about me. I've been with Tredence for close to 9 years. And in the 9 years, we have witnessed a lot of growth inside the company itself. When I joined, we were a double-digit company across both US and India. Now we are a few thousands. And I have witnessed a lot of transformation and growth internally as well, and also gotten an opportunity to work with a lot of clients across different industry verticals to work on transformational projects with them, right? One of my role models, Shashank Dubey, I don't think he's here, but he had a keynote in the previous room. And I have had the fortune to work with him on a lot of problem statements, some very complex. And one thing that I've learned about him is how do you take a problem statement which is complex, break it into smaller problem statements, and then devise an approach to solve for it, right? I've tried to do the same here as well. We'll talk about what is innovation, how do we tackle a seemingly complex problem like this, and what should be the strategies to ensure success. So let's look at what we are going to discuss here, just so that all of us are on board, we are aligned. So we'll start with some innovation trends that we are seeing in the market. Of course, a double click on test, launch, and scale. What is that framework? We'll talk about some of the key obstacles. What have we learned from the past? What has worked? What has not worked? What do we do from there? And then what's the path forward, right? What do we take in from this session? If there's one fact that has underscored itself probably more than the others, is change is the only constant. Now, we're all in the data and analytics industry. The world that we are in right now wasn't the world 5 years back and will not be the world 5 years from now. If you look at some of the statistics, it's going to be a $3 trillion market combining hardware, software, and services. It's growing in different directions. Advancements in core data science and machine learning techniques such as Gen AI and metaverse, both are going to change the way we interact with systems, the way we shop, the way we deal with e-commerce, and just a lot of improvements on a day-to-day basis. Hardware. The one name that comes to mind when I think of hardware in this world and this era is NVIDIA, right? I think we all can agree that the innovation that NVIDIA has taught us will carry forward, and it's front and center again of a lot of innovation. Technology advancements, again, things like DevOps and security ops, LLM ops, and so on and so forth, which help get the scale. And then hyperscalers, right, which give us the platform for us to productionize a lot of the innovations that we have seen. Now, I was reading an article about Jeff Bezos, right? One of the things that he mentioned stuck with me, and I thought I'll share it with you all. He said, I get asked a lot of questions around what is going to change, how should I run a business, how should I scale it? But what he said was very interesting. He said, understanding what's going to change is important, but understanding what's not going to change is even more important, right? Because it's all about change, right? I told about change is the only constant, but how do we devise a framework or a strategy that will help us stay stable, at the same time set a foundation to scale? And that is what we're going to talk about in the next few slides. Now let's understand innovation a little better, right? I spoke about breaking down problem statements, complex problem statements like innovation to smaller chunks. And if you all have been a part of innovation projects, transformational projects, you can map your projects, roles, etc., across any of these dimensions. It could be more than one as well. But this, again, is a standard matrix that has helped to classify innovation into different segments. Think of capabilities or skills or products across different regions, and you get 4 quadrants, right? It could be diversification, it could be product development, or it could be penetration. Now, the intent of me putting this slide together, sharing it with you all, is to help you guys understand that there are smaller chunks that need to be solved. Think of innovation. Each of these quadrants will require a specific skill set. Each of these quadrants have separate success criteria. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. And it requires specific persona as well. Right now, you could have a very radical thinking to have a new product in a new market. You could have something like, there is already an existing product, existing market. How do I enhance its productivity? And so on, right? So again, the understanding should be that there is a specific role, there's a specific approach to a problem like innovation, and that's how we should approach something like this. All right, test, launch, and scale. Now, I spoke of this framework. Now, if it has to be a one-liner definition of what this framework is and should be, it's essentially the framework to ensure success for you and for your teams, right? Now, I'm going to talk about each of these pillars individually, right? These are, at the same time, independent of each other, but also flow into one another, right? The output of one flows as an input to the other. Test is all about ensuring quick wins and getting credibility of your idea. An experimentation mindset to fail and fail fast, and okay to fail, right? Launch is all about getting your product or your technology in the hands of the user. And how do you ensure that the feedback that you're getting is relevant, is making sure that you move the product forward. And lastly, scale, which is making sure that this framework is all about scale, it's all about the world of ops, it's all about operational framework at the end of the day. Now, each of these phases require a different mindset to approach, and I'll talk about that in a second. But before that, I'm sure all of you would have followed the Olympics that got concluded in Paris a few months back. Now, the motto of Olympics has been Citius, Altius, and Fortius. It's a Latin phrase, which in English translates to bigger, faster, and stronger. Now, there was one element that got added to it as the motto evolved together, right? Which highlights the importance of teamwork, highlights the importance of collaboration. And we'll talk about how important teamwork and collaboration is as we think of this framework in a few slides. Now, I spoke of the fact that each of these require a different mindset. Now, test is all about a startup mindset. Now, I'm not saying we need to be in a startup to have that mindset, but it's more of a culture, it's more of an ongoing behavior to hustle, to get things done, and to make sure that you're adopting an experimentation mindset, you're okay to fail, but fail fast, and then move forward from there. The focus should be on the direction of the KPIs that you're trying to measure, rather than the actual value and the magnitude itself. And this phase specifically addresses the fear of being risk averse, right? We all don't like, actually I shouldn't say all, most of us, including myself, are risk averse, don't like to take a lot of risk. And especially in a corporate setting, in front of your colleagues, no thanks, right? Like we all are very comfortable with the status quo mindset. We are okay to run things as they are and make sure that, there's no problem with what's happening. But then comes launch. Now you've tested your idea. There is some credibility. Here is where rubber meets the road, right? Now your product, your technology is in the hands of a stakeholder. You're getting live feedback. You're making sure that it's relevant. Now there are higher expectations from you. Now that your stakeholders have seen a product, they've seen that journey, and they want more, right? Now we all have seen scenarios where we launch something and the stakeholders are coming up with areas of improvement, there are areas of additions, enhancements, and so on and so forth. And we quickly find ourselves digressing into incorporating that feedback. Now don't get me wrong, it's important to incorporate feedback, but not at the cost of diversing and outrunning your course. We should be very clear as product owners on what your product needs to be, right? And hence coming up with a prioritization framework is very important, especially at this juncture. And now we move to scale, which is a world of ops, like I mentioned. It requires an enterprise mindset. It's deeply rooted in business operations and hence needs a lot of rigor and discipline and a process-oriented approach to make sure that the product that we have now institutionalized is running at the accuracy and the speed that we had thought it will, right? Now, if you think of this framework in a little more of a zoomed out manner, you'll understand that this progressively moves forward. The previous phase has evolved. The next phase is better than the other. And as a combination, it will help you create short wins, quick wins, at the same time laying foundation for a longer term success, right? Now, with a show of hands, how many of you have seen or heard of a hype cycle before? Okay, I see a few hands. For the rest, a hype cycle essentially is a representation of a product or a technology as it goes through a series of maturity and adoption, right from when you launch, or actually even before that, when you've conceptualized it, when you launch, and then over time, the adoption with the stakeholders. Now, I found that these three pillars of test, launch, and scale associate very closely with the hype cycle. The expectation and the interest while you are at the test phase is immense, right? Everyone's looking forward to what you guys have created, what you will create, and hence you will see a lot of interest, a lot of enthusiasm, and so on. Now, the trough after that is not to be mistaken that the interest is not there, but there are no illusions. Now, you've got a reality check. You've tested the idea. You know what is possible, what is not possible, and you are, of course, experimenting on an ongoing basis. And then, of course, as you scale the idea, it moves on a more, the plateau of productivity essentially means, like I was saying in the previous slide, is deeply enrooted in your business operations, right? Now, when you think of this, it will help you understand the maturity and the adoption curve of your technology. It will help you map out the roadmap of your technology on what should you expect first, what comes second, what comes later in the longer term. And you can use that to get executive alignment, sponsorship, and a lot of collaboration with you guys. And then, of course, last but not the least, helps you staying ahead of the curve, right? Because in some cases, you can align it to the industry outlook as well, and helps you maintain what the outlook is, staying ahead, if not with the curve, right? Now, let's take a step back and look at the past on what has worked and what hasn't. Now, before I cover some of the obstacles and some of the things that have not worked in the past, I'd like to draw your attention to the quote that's mentioned at the bottom of the slide. Now, this is by a scientist by the name of Richard Feynman. He was an American physicist. He is credited with a lot of theories around quantum physics and particle theory and so on, and also won a Nobel Prize for physics. So fair to say that he has some credibility, and also knows a thing or two about experiments, right? But let's look at what he said. The test of all knowledge is experiment. Experiment is the sole judge of scientific truth. Test of all knowledge is experiment. What we think we know about the business, the only way to test that is experimentation, right? And what the experiments tell us is the truth. We're all a part of data science and the analytics industry. We all approach our problems through a very data-driven mindset. And we all can comfortably agree that there's no space for, well, I should say little space for gut and intuition and biases, right? It all needs to be data-driven. And experimentation is the way to go for that. One other thing that I was reading as I was preparing for this is 95% of the innovations fail even before launch. 95%. Why does that happen? It happens because of a few reasons. Lack of an unclear approach and a business outcome of what's going to work and what's not, right? We start off with a very fixed set of problem statements. Then over time, because there are multiple teams involved, there are stakeholder inputs, we lose track of what we started off with. And hence, the North Star has now shifted. Everyone has a very different point of view on what's going to work, what's not going to work. And it's all a chaos, right? So what we started off with versus what we end up with, or even during the course of the process, it's totally different. Lack of org alignment and collaboration. I spoke about teamwork when I was talking about the Olympic motto. It's very important to take the teams forward with you. At the very least, align with your stakeholders on what they should expect in terms of the deliverable, in terms of the impact, and in terms of the timelines, right? Sometimes there are unclear communication and expectation settings of what is expected of you if you are at the front end of the stakeholder or you as an owner. And hence, it's very tough to institutionalize any experiment within an organization. Fear of taking risks. I spoke about us being risk averse. That is probably the single most reason why innovations don't take off or don't even make it to the charter in the first place, right? And relating to that is us being very uncomfortable with a fail and a fail fast sort of a mindset, right? We don't like to do things where there is a possibility of a failure, right? And of course, last is lack of skill set and probably financial constraints. And that, of course, is an organizational thing. But skill sets, of course, you can solve it through multiple approaches and so on. But here are some of the reasons why things work or probably don't work, and what should we learn from this in the past, right? What do? Prioritize your use cases only and only based on business impact, nothing else. Think of innovation as an ongoing journey versus a finite milestone. Across all of these stages that we spoke about, test, launch, and scale, there will be smaller successes, smaller failures, but it's very important for us to understand that it's not the end. You should have the end goal in sight, and these smaller successes and failures shouldn't overly excite or depress you, right? Org alignment and collaboration, I've spoken about that in the previous slides as well. Teamwork makes the dream work, very important for us to understand. Now, there's a very famous scientist, Isaac Newton, hoping all of you have heard of him. His discovery is the reason why I'm standing here. But jokes aside, what he mentioned, let's look at that. It is the weight and not the number of experiments that need to be regarded. I've seen a lot of experimentation reports and measurement frameworks where they focus on the volume of use cases, right? That you get to the end of a quarter and your teams talk about a report where they say, I've run 100 experiments. Okay, so what? What do you do with that? Where is the business impact? Where is the outcome, right? And our approach to tackling innovation, to tackling experimentation should not be to please everyone, right? It should be tied very, very closely with the business outcomes, right? So those are some of the things that we should very, very carefully think about and institutionalize in our ways of working. I'm going to leave you guys with a few parting thoughts on what have we learned in the past, what have we learned in the last few minutes, and what do we do from here. Now, innovation is not a buzzword, right? Like, I know we are in the industry where we talk about Gen AI, we talk about metaverse, we talk about a lot of these other things to sound cool. It's not a buzzword. There is value to it, and there is responsibility to it. It should be extremely and deeply embedded into the business outcomes. It's not something which is very separate from how you are running a business, right? The end outcome should always be to improve the outcome of the business, right? How do I make the lives better of my stakeholders? What can I do better so they're able to take better decisions, faster decisions, and make it relevant for them? Trusting the process and embracing uncertainty, right? This probably is the single most important point here, where we are very quickly eager to move from one step to the other without totally realizing the value of the previous slide or the previous step, right? Like I said, we are not comfortable with uncertainty. We want clear outputs. We want a visibility on what's going to happen. But as teams, we need to understand that it's okay to be uncertain. I don't know what I don't know, but I have a first principle problem-solving approach to solve for it, right? And then, of course, adapting a very objective view in terms of measurement, right? What has worked in the past? What has not worked in the past? How do I take what I have built for my customers, for my users, and then go from here, right? Now, one last thought which I'll leave you guys with is we are all witnessing change in different directions, at different pace, at different speeds, and so on and so forth. And it's okay to say that I don't know this. But I hope what we've covered in the last 20, 25 minutes will give you the framework and the confidence to say that I don't know it, but I'm confident I'm going to learn and then grow from here and then succeed. That's all from my side. Thank you so much for your time.